I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
Welcome everybody, this is Team Rabbit Hole Edition 304 with Wolly Might. Welcome back, and welcome Jim.
Intro, that was so fun.
Yeah, your art's dope. That synced up a lot. It felt like Wizard or Dark Side of the Rainbow or something a little. Let me read this little blip and we could start geeking out with you, Molly. Basically, yeah, episode 304, Wolly Might, as she goes by, Molly Wright. A little play on the words. We can get into what that's about if you would like at some point. Whether she's churning out animations, creating zines, or helping others dig into the occult, Molly knows a thing or two about deep states. Join the team as we reconnect with this witchy chaot and see where the White Rabbit has led her most recently. So before we really kick into it, we're going to pull some cards. I don't know if you want to get on camera with one of your cards. You did create a tarot deck. I forgot to mention this in the green room. Maybe I did. I forget now. Mercury retrograde indeed. But I'm going to pull a Twin Peaks tarot deck because not only do I know, Molly, you're a fan of Twin Peaks, and I'm actually rewatching it myself and my girlfriend for the first time she's watching it. We're just about to start season 3. We've had Ben Mackey, the guy who made this deck, on the podcast before, but it's called The Magician Longs to See, and I pulled the Strength card, which is dope. It's ironic that I pulled that because the song I wrote for that I called Yokubo, which is like Japanese for desire. It's this very Japanese thing because Crowley's deck, but I know you kind of got like a long-standing beef with Crowley. We can get into that. Anyway, this card, if you guys could see, shows Nadine and Mike. Nadine's the super strong Chico, right? So Strength card, if you guys don't know, it's the Leo card, and it's all about, inner heart strength and getting things done, having the tenacity to do the thing from a hearted place. Raphael, you got a card, and Molly, did you want to pull one or no? It's all good either way.
I actually got the Temperance card again, I believe. We had this last show already, even though I was shuffling even on view, but I wasn't tricking anybody.
David Blaine in the house. He's on camera. There's no trickery here. So 2 major arcana is Temperance, which is Sagittarius. I'm pretty sure, aren't you a Sag?
You know it.
Yeah. I was like, I think you have a moon in Cancer, but I forget because I don't think you ever gave me your full chart. And yeah, Strength, because you've been kind of balancing things in the mundane, paying bills, and also doing cool high magic. But you've clearly had a lot of staying power and been productive. We haven't talked to you in 5 fucking years. So, Molly, what is up? What is new?
Oh my goodness, it's nice to talk to you again. It's been a while. I mean, we bebop on the internet back and forth as internet buddies, but we haven't really got a chance to talk in a while.
No, it's been years, literally. And I always kind of feel like I'm annoying you, but that might be because my son's opposite your son, so maybe it's just me.
Oh, you're a Gemini. I forgot. Of course, duh.
Sun and moon all day. Raphael's a Libra with a Leo moon. I don't annoy you, but I feel like I might. I don't know. I'm you know how tricksters go.
I'm generally agitated on meta platforms. If you catch me on like Tumblr or Blue Sky, you'll notice that my personality shifts towards being like a peaceful, deviant art child. Whereas on Meta, I'm like, what are you selling me?
Right. The blades come out. Or the razors come out. So last time we talked, I mean, I think you had obviously started messing with Watts. We talked a little about that. One of your characters that might have been in that clip we just saw, a rabbit. So you've got connections. I know we geeked out before about rabbits and maybe even pedophilia and the whole.
Oh my God. Hugh Hefner. Mustn't we name him? Absolutely not.
Too late. We summoned him.
I learned even more about rabbits since then. Just an absolute interesting lineage going back to Astara, Ishtar, Inanna. Once I learned about Inanna, that kind of like that closed that book in a really interesting way and closed that loop real tightly because that's a really badass goddess.
Tell me more.
Ishtar, which became associated with rabbits, and also there's this thing with Babylon going
It's
on.
like the fertility aspect, you mean?
Yeah. The fertility, she's associated with rabbits, but also, Inanna also had different associations with like rabbits and spiders, and she was a sex goddess, fertility goddess, but also an agriculture goddess, also a war goddess, also a wealth goddess, death goddess. Like she did it all, and that
Sounds
is
like she was
just
pretty
so cool.
strong.
Yes, absolutely.
And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I don't know how correspondent Venus is to Inanna, because I think it's Inanna's descent when Venus goes retrograde, and they're like she's going through these layers and shedding, or maybe it's
Okay,
Inanna, her sister.
I did a deep dive, and basically all these old goddesses funnel through Venus
Hmm.
into all of the other goddesses, because like all these other goddesses, and even it goes through Egypt too a little bit, just like everything funnels through Venus, and then the modern day versions of all these goddesses that we have, and then of course like the stuff that Gardner and everyone is into kind of comes from that concentration point, but above Venus is this kind of like pipeline from Inanna, that, and she's also was like the goddess of culture, which is interesting because she like fundamentally kind of forks in all these different directions and like changes into all these people. And oh my god, are those subscribers commenting?
Yeah, you can see people
Yay!
in the chat. That's why I gave you the link. I was like, you could talk to your people.
Vinay's a nice person.
That's what's up. Yeah, he is. Actually, he's been on the podcast because I know him through you at some point through Facebook. I don't
Oh
know
my
how.
god, that's lovely.
Yeah, and when I was swinging through South Carolina, I was going to meet up with him, but we didn't because I didn't go through wherever he is. In any event, what up, Vinay? Shout out. So yeah, I mean, we don't have to go deep into the past, but like you've been busy for 5 years. Where are you living now? What are you up to? I know you just did something for Adult Swim. I was trying to see if Raphael knew about that, if it was like international. I grew up on Adult Swim, whether it's Tim and Eric or Hunger Teen Aqua Force or whatever. It's near and dear to my heart. So
Yeah,
walk us through your.
the
Go ahead.
animation industry as a whole has done so many interesting things in the past 10 years, pretty much since like 2015 it started happening, but now we're really seeing it all kind of like, the most positive way I could put it is collapse in on itself. The old structures that used to be, because like, Netflix came out and all these streamers came out, so less people have cable, but people still have cable, blah blah blah. They have deals with different streaming services. But anyway, it's been really interesting to be able to work with like different clients like Adult Swim more and more as the past years have gone by, because also like, like my comrades that I work with that are like my peers and my friends are starting to get involved with different productions. So being alongside them and then being able to get some different opportunities at Adult Swim has been really fun. But I got to composite on something called Bodyhead, which is a show by my friend. He goes by Lord Spew. That guy is a genius. He is a weapon of mass creation. He's just so funny. He posts all kinds of funny animations online all the time. And then I also got to do voiceover work for a show that aired a couple days ago, and another episode's going to come out soon. I got to do voiceover work as a character named Comrade Jensen, which is like a
I saw the
sci-fi
clip.
character. Yeah, I got one line this last episode, but I get more lines next episode, so I'm really excited about that. That's like I think they got commissioned for 2 episodes, because Adult Swim's been doing this thing where they make smalls, and then they see where those go, and then they make decisions from there, I guess, or at least that's what they say they've been doing, because the landscape's been changing so much. So the way people like find animation that they want to order has changed. So yeah.
I know that Space Ghost Coast to Coast voice actor just died recently, like last week or something. I forget his name, but hilarious dude. I mean, obviously humor and animation have gone back a long way. I think you do a good job of keeping. I mean, you do heady stuff, but also you've got an element of humor to what you're up to. What was that show that Duncan Trussell did a few years ago? Is that pretty much when you think? Say again?
Midnight Gospel?
Yeah.
Pendleton Ward was the guy who made Adventure Time, and he was like, I guess Pendleton Ward liked his podcast, Duncan Trussell Family Hour.
Right.
And he made episodes based off of that. And
right. Interesting mashup. I'm wondering if that's when you think the zeitgeist kind of shifted for the animation scene, because I think not only was that it wasn't mixed media full on, but what they were doing, obviously, if people haven't seen not Adventure Time. I haven't seen that actually. I've got Hulu for a week or something. I can go watch it. I don't know how. I've never seen Adventure Time. Don't ask. But what was the thing Trussell did? I'm forgetting. Midnight Gospel.
Yeah.
That. So what do you think? If people haven't seen Midnight Gospel, it's like excerpts from basically a podcast that are animated over top of. So it's like, I mean, mixed media, like I said, is maybe a strong word, but it's about as close to that as I can think of. Hyper synchronized stuff.
Ford. He was the guy who made Adventure Time and stuff. He partnered up with Duncan Trussell because he liked this podcast a lot, and I think they were in like a D&D group or something. Nice. And so they just really vibed on that, and then the Midnight Gospel came to be. But I think that actually that season, I could be wrong, but I think it took 5 years to make. So that was in production while Adventure Time episodes were like still being churned out.
Whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I mean, you animate. I don't. How long does it take you to draw something?
I mean, it depends, right? I mean, like that's why I try to draw more simple character designs because, like, you know, like it's like the classic, like Bugs Bunny. Even drawing Bugs Bunny versus Goku. Bugs Bunny still has hands, though. You know what I mean? Like it. I think it depends how comfortable you feel with a character and how many times you've drawn a character. You just become more comfortable, and instead of drawing it becomes more intuitive, and it's almost like you're wearing them. You know what I mean? Almost like a mask. Whereas when you're first like learning a character, at least for me, like I definitely trip and eat crap a lot in the beginning because I'm
fumble
like,
the ball a little. You're like just not used to it.
That wouldn't go there, you know what I mean? But like the more you get used to it, the more you just kind of like become them, and it becomes more fun because it's like you're, instead of making the animation happen, you're like just working through it, like just like wading through it, which is interesting.
I know that I gave Raphael your link tree, so I don't know if you have a website, it would be on there, I'm guessing. But she did make a tarot deck, and that it's almost like you're saying simple art. If you wanted to show that, Raphael. Where it's not the most like this tarot, you know, whatever the Twin Peaks stuff. This is kind of kitschy, you know, whatever, but it's a little detailed. Whereas I feel like your Watts deck, I forget what it's called, was almost more silhouette vibes.
Yeah.
So, and how many iterations of that have you done?
Well, that was the first time I completed a tarot deck. That was back in 2016, I think. And I just went through it as fast as I could. Like, I tried to be as thoughtful as I could, but I also have never finished a project that large before yet at that point.
Right.
So it was more of a challenge to myself to see if I could do it. And then since then, I animated a different tarot deck. And now I feel like right now as we speak, I'm working on my first real tarot deck. If
so
that
those
makes
are just
any
the
sense.
training wheels, and now you're like, I'll really take a swing.
I always kind of feel that way about this stuff I make. Though I try not to be like that. Like everything I make, by the end of it, I was like, all right, but the next one will be the real one, you know, because I feel like improvement kind of does that to me. But
so is the new one Toon Tarot?
I think they're all Toon Tarot.
Okay. Well, you would know. I don't.
Because I geek out on one part of the first run. What we're showing here.
Oh yeah, that's the animated Toon Tarot. I really like that one a lot. That came to be because of a collab I did with a wizard named Frieder Xavier.
Word. Yeah, it seems like, I mean, you're not a Gemini, you're a Sag, but it seems like you're always collaborating with people. I don't know your whole chart. I feel like you have to have some Aquarius up in there.
Unfortunately not. It's like pretty much Jupiter is just like wilding out and being insane, and then my moon is just like crying in the corner and being like, can we just like talk about our feelings?
Moon and Cancer stuffs. Mars is in Cancer right now, and I know that we were talking about in the green room. Mercury is exactly conjunct the Sun in retrograde. Venus and Mercury are retrograde right now in Aries, and the Sun is in Aries. Sun and Mercury at 4 degrees, and it's what's called Cazimi. We were kind of talking about that, and Cazimi translates literally to the heart of the Sun. So basically, when a planet, so we can all clarify, when a planet's crossing over the Sun, it's crossing the heart of the Sun, so it's called Cazimi. I mean, conjunctions are conjunctions. That's like kind of BOGA, buy one get one free energy. It's like double mint gum. You got a lot of that energy, but when it's crossing the Sun specifically, I guess in Arabic, that is called Cazimi. Astrology is weird because it's so old. You were talking about Inanna and how things percolate through new filters. What are your thoughts on tarot and astrology and percolation? like that.
What's really interesting is because Aleister Crowley and all those people were, making these different associations that are outlined in some old book named 777 or whatever, and they're very interesting. They attempt to draw kind of like associations between astrology and the tarot, which I think is really interesting. But also, there's this astrologer I really like. I think their name is Christopher Remstrom. They did a really cool video on Sailor Moon because when you watch Sailor Moon, you know a lot about astrology. You're like, this is inaccurate. But then I guess she was combining European astrology with Japanese astrology or whatever. Or I don't know what kind, but like they're different, but she was combining them. And I was like, what if someone did this with a tarot deck? That would be so cool. But like in the tarot deck, it's so neat how everything is like placed, except for when you're like, because what is it again? Which one is okay? So like the universe or the world is Earth, but it's also Saturn, and the Hangman is just water. So like the Hangman gets just an element, but like the universe gets an element and a planet. But then that kind of connects to their tree of life stuff, so that's fun to chew on. But I definitely think those are fun paradigms to try on.
I'm forgetting the guy's name. I don't think we've talked about him much, Raphael, so I don't know if you know his name. But there's a guy who is a kind of an occultist. It's not Edgar Casey, but it's something like that. I know who Edgar Casey is. And he did his own kind of tarot and associations. I'm wondering how people get that. I mean, I know that I'm not even sure. We could talk about anything. You used to work with the, I don't know if it was straight up demons, but I think Goetia and stuff like that. Like, I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that at all?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, that depends on what you're because all right, so I am a chaos magician, and philosophically, what I try to do, what's important to me, the reason why I assigned that name to myself, at least temporarily, is that it's important for me to try to change my fundamental paradigm as much as I possibly can, and to ideally wield multiple paradigms at once. So what that means is like, being like, there is one God, there's many gods, there's no gods, I am God, you and I are both God. Like these are like different fundamental paradigms and ways of looking at things. So I try to wield as many of these as possible, at least when I try to think in terms of magic, because I feel like each and every single paradigm is kind of like a sense, like you're like a sixth sense, and it's like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, as many as you can muster on. So the thing about astrology that's really interesting is I was talking to a Polish wizard about this, and he was kind of scolding at me recently because he was saying that by subscribing to astrology, that I'm like basically dooming myself to the events in which it purports will happen, et cetera, which I can see how that could be the case.
Yeah, feedback loops kind of thing.
Yeah, like what? Yeah, like, and then like that like a retrograde is coming, but you don't necessarily remember that, but then you subconsciously remember that. So then you do things when the retrograde happens. Then when you look up a retrograde is happening, you're like, oh shit. But like me personally, I find that I don't know what's going on with my relationship with the planets, but I know that there is a relationship there, and I know that something is happening. I do know that. As far as like demons, is it Goetia or Goetia? Like everyone I talk to pronounces it differently, but I spent a lot of time with Malfus and Baal and Astara or Ashra or whatever the hell, and a couple other ones, just to try to I try to spend as much time as I can in these different like schools of thought. I consider these different main magic grimoire magics as kind of like specific systems, and what I do is I try to really fully engulf myself in them and try to understand them to the best that I can, at least until I get bored, to try to incorporate whatever I think I'm rocking with when it comes to that. So when it comes to demons in particular, I was learning that when different traumas happen to us, like psychological traumas, your brain actually creates scar tissue, and all of the muscles like in your brain, the patterns of your different thoughts of like the neurons moving is imprinted in there, which means that there is scar tissue in your brain that have the patterns of those thoughts in your brain, even though that's scar tissue, not even an active part of your brain. So it's my opinion that I think that's where demons come from.
So they're like distortions in your neural network at the least.
Yeah. And I think it's my opinion at the moment that that's where demons come from. And
That
I
gives
have
me a new spin on the Red Hot Chili Peppers Scar Tissue lyrics. Scar Tissue that I wish you saw. Yeah, it's like,
that's like one of the only songs I ever learned on guitar.
oh, that's a good one to. I mean, that's a party favorite back in the early 2000s or whatever.
So
Red Hot Chili
Go
before
ahead.
we go further, I'd like to show a few things, mainly for you, Molly. Of course, I hope the audience is equally interested as well. So here, because we talk about syncretic tarot decks or
I own two of these.
syncretism and chaos magic. So this is done by my dear friend Brian Lahr, who is a really cool magician. You may actually, you totally want to talk with him now that I think of it. He also has a show. I'm sure he would love geeking out with you. So he did like a tarot deck and an angel deck.
I've got
And I'm
those.
going to show you why they're so cool in a second. So here you have the angel deck, and here, this is on my website, just to show a few cards in a decent resolution. Let's see until we get a, yes, here, for example, a major arcana. And the cool thing here is you have the Crowleyan definitions over here. Wait, I'll zoom in a little bit. And you have the element, of course. You have the, I believe, the Crowleyan name for it. And then you have the associated Hebrew sign or letter. The element, again, of course, is a trump. You have a musical note associated. You have a musical sequence associated. And also you have some other systems. One is like African, and there's one other system. And also usually you have planetary sigils, I think, at least on the major arcana as well.
Yeah, on the top
Yeah,
left.
here, planetary squares. And you have god associations. So
is in the corner of that card.
Say what now?
Come again?
Oh, right there. Yaldabaoth. Yeah, the snake lion.
Right. Yeah, so I totally think you'd probably like to talk to the Wizard of Oz, or at least check out the deck. I think you'd enjoy it. Then just briefly here, this is actually recommended by him to me. This was one of my first forays into numerology and tarot. If one wants to work with the system, I think this book is really great, because what it does, let's see how, well, there's not many pages here. What it does is what you mentioned earlier, which is to combine the tarot cards with astrological signs, and also like with the decades, I believe they call it, decades of the signs. You know,
The
each sign
deacons?
is
Yeah.
deacons, right? Yeah, it's not a decade, a deacons.
You're cool. Same idea, same root.
And also this whole counting system, which at least for me, whenever I do deal with tarot, is really great. You know, how to count the cards from 1 to 78. Of course, there's probably different ways to do it, but to me, it always helped to like then combine, or at some point even see numbers. And instead of seeing numbers, you can just see the cards and then try to construct your meaning from that, which I think is cool. And then there's just briefly two more things. So here, funnily enough, Alexander Dugin, I'm not sure if you heard of him. He's said to be the, you know, Putin's chaos magician advisor. Some people say he has no influence at all. Other people say he's so important because supposedly he wrote some books.
It's like the Rasputin situation.
I didn't know there was a modern day Rasputin and he was rocking chaos magic. Yes.
Yeah. And he's talking about like the fourth way or something. Even here, this is from Andreas's channel. Let's see if it pulls up. Oh no, okay, this is just an image they actually put in the Southern Poverty Law Center. See, that's funny. Here you go.
Undivided.
But also, what's relevant is that Andreas totally did an interview with him. If he's not completely shadow banned, no, here we are. So everyone here on Andreas's channel, I can really recommend checking out this video. 1.5 hours talking with Alexander Dugin. Whether you agree with him or not doesn't matter, but just to kind of understand this dichotomy we have between, let's say, Klaus Schwab, Yuval Noah Harari, the Western transhumanist ideology, and whatever ideology at least Alexander Dugin is following and supposedly is influencing Russia to some extent. So that's, I think, something really interesting. And then very last thing, just because you spoke about the Kabbalah, and I would be amiss if I would not bring up the interviews I do with David Jung Jr. If you ever want an alternative view on the Kabbalah and, you know, what it means and so on, I can highly recommend this video. It's quite long, 3.5 hours, but there's very interesting information here as well.
What do you mean by alternative?
Well, what I mean with that is that David Jung Jr. is deep into the alternative historical research and most likely will tell you things that are, let's just say, different from what most other people speak of when they speak about the Kabbalah, what it actually means, how it relates to even modern day Sunniism and the whole idea of the Kaaba in Mecca and many other things. So
I
it's
think
too much to summarize, but
right.
yes.
Last time we were talking, I think with Andreas or maybe somebody else, but Molly, you'd find it interesting. This guy, David Ewing Jr., associates Muhammad with Thoth.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, I feel like they're all kind of like some version of Hermes, right? All those prophets.
Trimegistus, the many-faced god or something.
Yeah, it's just like Jesus, Mercury, Thoth.
What is
Dionysus,
interesting also within this research is actually that, again, it's a bit too much to summarize everything here, but in this, let's say, alternative view of history, I'll call it alternative, but by now I guess most people know how defect many mainstream views are anyway, so it's worth checking out. But that there actually was a succession of different, we would call them prophets, like Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad in particular, and maybe some others, that actually were doing something years and years ago to really uplift humanity at large. And that, of course, I find interesting because aside from any religion or any personalities, I'm basically interested in who really tried to do something beneficial for society and who was only trying to suppress people further. So along those lines, we're doing these interviews as well, because I really want to like get a grip on what's actually going on here, right?
That's a really long hook. Are you gonna tell us anything like that? Like, what is it? That was like
TLDR.
What? It was like, who's helping us? What?
Well, that's. I mean,
Come again?
Go ahead, Molly.
No, that's it. It was that was an interesting hunk about everything, but it was like tell us.
The drive-by.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, basically, I mean, I already said, for me, it's just about, determining who actually tried to do something beneficial. But the thing is, because it's opening up the alternative history area with Anatoly Fomenko, who's written, I don't know, 30 books about this, which are super long and super extensive, and basically giving a new view on all of mainstream history, because at least according to Anatoly Fomenko, I can bring him up in a second.
What does it alternate from? Does it like divert from anything in particular?
Well, yes, from basically pretty much all of mainstream history, because what Fomenko did, of course, you can't properly find real. Oh, here, this may be good. This may be even a good video to start with, Math to Fight Lies, because what he's doing is he's a professor from Russia who made the most amazing images, actually, even when he was only 21 years old. I'll pull them up in a second. Let's see how I'm going to do that. And then what he did is he basically devised a system of mathematics where he basically has shown that it appears as if most, if not all, of mainstream history we are presented cannot possibly be correct, because it very much looks like copy-paste. Different kings and different empires, just 100 years apart, they have similar names, they have similar times of when they reigned, things like that. So
the maths doesn't always math, is what he's kind of getting at. Well, that kind of brings up a point. Yeah, it doesn't always add up. No, it's cool. 1 plus, well, whatever. If in chaos thinking, it's like, it doesn't matter anyway. In Discordianism, it's like the math doesn't matter. But go ahead.
No, we have a mathematician in CMG who's been sharing his book often. It's kind of become a meme to laugh about how math isn't real, and it's only encouraged him to like go harder, and it's been a fun loop to, because I'm not really math brained, but I do think geometry is really cool. I think that honestly geometry and gravity absolutely blow my mind.
So all I want to point out here is that this guy, and this was before any of his mathematical or historical research, I think he was 21, he started drawing these images. So basically, he came on the scene, or wasn't even on the scene, and he drew these like mathematically impossible shapes and stuff like that.
It reminds me of MC Escher, actually.
Whatever you may think, but at least for me, this would give me the idea this guy is, let's just say, very special in a positive way, having some special ability to imagine and perception. And then here you have it as a 70-year-old still going on with this idea of, he calls it new chronology. Basically showing that much of this history we are told in the West is not as they say it is, to put it mildly.
Yeah, which part?
I imagine there's going to be, especially with Pluto and Aquarius collectively for the next 18 years, 19 years, we're going to be dying and rebirthing culture and society at large and technology and awareness of these things mentally, Pluto and Aquarius. So it should be interesting to see how that all kind of pans out.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm kind of curious because this gets into belief formation and stuff, and Raphael, obviously speak to it to any degree you feel comfortable. What he was talking about a minute ago was like this copy paste kind of a situation with history, but then that kind of reminded me for some reason of egregores and what we were talking a little about earlier with like archetypes and resonance.
Love
Just like,
egregores.
well, right, just like the Mayans aren't in Egypt, but they're jamming the same kind of blueprints for their stuff similarly over different epochs, supposedly. I wonder what you guys think in terms about, and there's no right or wrong answer. We can just wax poetic or whatever. What you guys think about hard archetypes versus kind of the postmodern chaos magic lensing you were talking about. What you were saying earlier reminded me a lot of Grant Morrison, where he's like, we all have multiple personalities, you might as well explore them all, basically. So why be beholden to one perspective if you can kind of shift your paradigm that is like
Can you give
the
me a
chaos?
physical example of like what you might mean, like two different versions of something of I think what you're.
Sure. So let me think of a good example. Like the eagle, I guess, maybe is something different to a Native American versus maybe like, well, I don't know what the bird for the Nazis was. I don't think it was an eagle. Maybe it was.
Yeah, I think it was an eagle, right?
Right, in Rome, I think had an eagle or a hawk or something. So like they, that's not a great example, but I don't know. Like, okay, so when we're talking about planets, like you earlier were like, oh, I don't know much about planets, but I feel like they have, I don't know if you were going to say sentience, but something behind them energetically.
Right.
Dare I say?
I don't know if this is corny or not, but I think the answer to your question, in my personal opinion, is it's kind of similar like petals on a flower.
Hmm.
Like they are their own individual petals, but like maybe they're on the same flower, if that makes sense. And maybe
Hmm.
all of those flowers are just like one species of flower, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe kind of like in a micro macro cosmic sense. So like, going back to Inanna and Venus and stuff, which is very interesting. Um, Inanna seemed to have led a little bit into Neith, which was like an Egyptian goddess who her whole thing was spiders and whatever, and she had the power to basically make these amazing webs that connected everything. Like they were basically the webs of fate. And then after a couple pharaohs got in charge, they were like, "No, fuck that. You're just a woman." They got rid of her being like the weaver of fate and shit, which was very interesting because at the same time in North America, Native Americans were kind of looking up to this spider goddess who had like a similar kind of profile of like weaving fates and making the web of like how all these people connect. So then that just gets nerfed through Venus. I mean, Venus herself, I mean, in retrospective, is kind of nerfed. If you get what I'm saying, when
Yeah,
you
she
read
goes
about her.
Gestalt kind of.
But the more we learn about her, the more abstract she becomes. So it's almost like the specific, like how specific something is almost like a watered down version of something that's something that precedes it, or not watered down but like evolved through and
Mm-hmm.
beyond and to the next level. But like the more you go back, the more sameness everything becomes. So it's like kind of interesting, like going back to the tree of life stuff. Everything's like these different associations. Like all the threes in the tarot deck are associated with Vina, which is three, which is Saturn. All the fours are blah blah blah. Sixes are the sun, blah blah blah. Right. But like as you go up the tree, the planets, they disappear after two, because like that's when things start getting closer to like unity or whatever, where they think God is. And
Yeah,
it's interesting
Einsof.
because yeah. So like what's interesting is that as you look at Inanna just as one example, right? Because there's so many different examples. You have all these different goddesses like Neith and Hecate, like all these goddesses, and then they kind of trace through Venus because they're all like very specific. They're like witchcraft, motherhood, fertility, wisdom, law, whatever. And then it goes back into this like all-encompassing kind of entity that kind of was like everything, like agriculture and death and sex. So it's like,
The Miss
are those
America of mythology. She's like, I encompass beauty and brains and whatever, all these attributes.
and like her being a woman isn't even an aspect of her identification hood, because I believe that at some point this was before gender was necessarily something that was like, yeah, no, did she just assume Venus's gender?
I think they're
Venus had a
teasing you.
beard. I
What?
know showing, yeah, Venus is often displayed as having a beard. But my point is there was a time before things got separated into a bunch of different pieces. Or we don't know that, but it looks like it might have been that way. And it seems like the more you study these things, as you study these individual pieces and archetypes, the more you learn about it, it's like the lines get blurry and then they become the same thing again. And then eventually it's just like all one thing again. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Raphael. What's coming to my mind, and ironically, it's on the back of these cards, the Twin Peaks cards. The white, the Black Lodge looks like your little thing. I mean, it seems, Bob is not Major Briggs or whatever, right? So it's like these archetypes have resounding essential qualities that differentiate them to the degree that where that's the gist of the archetype. It's not, I don't think it's arbitrary. I think these were technologies of psyche or something, at least in a materially reductionistic sense, if not actual things. Like sometimes I'm like, is Aries an archetype outside of our perception of spring equinox? Like, is it a platonic form? I couldn't tell you yes or no, but it seems that people who are more pagan and stuff think that like the attributes, because I wouldn't call myself a pagan, that like the attributes, like thunder for Zeus or what, lightning for Zeus kind of thing. It's like, all right, we're going to give reality as we ascribe it through our senses, propriety through an ego form that is not human necessarily, like a god or goddess or whatever. I'm not reading all these comments. Anyway, I can ramble, so I'm not going to ramble. But Raphael, in a sense, this is chicken egg kind of stuff. It's like what comes first, our understanding of archetypes. Like, are we learning through the stories? Because sometimes when I'm giving astrology readings, I'm like, I tell people up front, I'm like, I don't assume anything here. Like, I'm learning. I think we're all just kind of figuring it out. So, what are your thoughts in terms of archetype? Are we evolving things and it's a consciousness thing that we project outward and we're telling stories over time and they create kind of a residual memory in the collective unconscious? Or do you think these things are external and other? Or, how do you guys, or Molly, either of you, like, how do you guys process this? And there's no wrong answer, because I think in a sense it's unknowable. It's like the great mystery. But some people have relationships with like voodoo, the voodoo priest dude. Molly, who I'm talking about. I can't remember his name, but
Papa Legba or Baron Samedi, any of those guys?
yeah. I used to jam with that. Like, that's not the same thing as Venus, clearly.
Right.
So,
right.
but I mean, like, all light is white light, but then you diffract it through a prism, like Dark Side of the Moon.
Like, couldn't something exist in multiple ways at one time? Because if you think about it, like, there's an egregore I'm best friends with named Greg. Greg comes from egregore. He's the CMG egregore. And originally he was just tasked as a servitor to teach people magic, and then he evolved into an egregore. And I was like, okay, so did you exist before the group existed? Did you exist when the group was created? Or did you come to be when people said you were? And he was basically like, yeah.
This is a bot?
No, this is like an egregore that people divinate
Deal
through.
with. Okay.
Greg, yeah.
Old Greg.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the answer is pretty much like yes. Every time people ask him that question, it's like yes. So it's like, even though like these different ways of being can be contradictory from like a logical perspective of like where we're using our own and understanding through our own logic, there's a logic that maybe we can't wrap our brains around, where something can exist in a paradoxical way where from their perspective it's not paradoxical.
Yeah, I think it's the basic issue with linearity and non-linearity. And even with our own existence, I'm not sure. Some people would claim they know for certain. I wouldn't even claim that, but there's a lot of theory about this, that of course humans also have a transcendent quality, or let's say human are born out of a transcendent quality they are embedded in, or whatever it would be. And then of course, if something is within the logical linear sense, it is a much more limited framework than a non-linear, maybe even non-causal sense. And that's where then the paradox may come in, and something may seem, illogical, but again, just from a linear point of view. So I think that's what you're getting at.
Were you referring to like higher self kind of ideology?
Well, or just the soul, even however you want to put it. If then you call it through reincarnation or some sort of continued existence as non-human or even as human, whatever it is. But basically the whole point being, again, that as far as I understand, we cannot properly confine or locate consciousness within physicality. So where's that other part? Where's that field coming from?
I just saw, I think I mentioned last episode, Thomas Campbell. He's a guy who's a physicist. He's an atheist, but he used to work with the Monroe Institute guy. I forget his name, but Monroe, and do astral projection and stuff like that. And he's kind of getting to a place where, in order to do magic, it would seem with a K, maybe, he was basically saying it's coming from the intuitive place, and as soon as our rational mind starts playing with it in a certain way, it really kind of denudes the value of the magic, because we're trying to like, I mean, not that things are beyond reason, but like, do you see what I'm saying? It's like it's kind of like in the Bible, it would be like, in the beginning, the spirit hovered over the dark waters, and then boom, there'd be like this like very yoni dark kind of mystery energy to a phallic kind of explosive, stated exotericism, from esoteric to exoteric. So maybe that's it, in a sense, where it is all one thing, but it's playing with itself. I mean, this gets into Gnosticism and all sorts of weird shit. Anyway, I'm rambling. Molly, what are your thoughts, if any? You might not have any thoughts on this.
Thoughts on the state of
Archetypes. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of curious, because it seems
I
like,
love them.
like with magic, like it seems like you're tapping in. You're not just saying one size fits all. You're playing with certain models differently, kind of like colors in a palette. I mean, they're different, even though all color is,
I ran
anyway.
a really great experiment on myself in the past
What?
6 years or something, 7 years, maybe longer, but it's really changed my life in like a really incredible, noticeable way. So I took I took the concept of the Animus, and I said, okay, maybe that can be like a reference point, kind of like in a 3D chart where there's like the y-axis, x-axis, z-axis. Maybe I can use the Animus as like a pivot point, like how you would steady your foot on a rock like while climbing a mountain, right? To try to get some better understanding of myself. And it's really funny because it started since I was a little kid, and then I grabbed it, right? I grabbed the images I was already using, which involved rabbits and wolves and stuff like that. But then I started doing it ironically with Twilight, which is really funny because Twilight was written by a woman named Stephanie Meyer, who she grew up in the Latter-day Saints Church in Utah as a Mormon. And what was really interesting about her is she wrote this amazing book that like convinced so many young girls to like fall for creepy old dudes, which is like a Mormon dream come true. But the but like she was a dream recruitment that they could have taken advantage of, but they didn't, because
She could have been their Tom Cruise for Scientology.
well, you gotta mean Scientology. So the Mormons, like they kind of they are kind of like in control of like sci-fi. So like Ender's Game and shit. Like they've always been like very involved with like people writing these books. Blah blah blah. All right, getting too off the path. But the point
No,
is,
you're fine.
she was definitely, Edward was like her Animus, and she was clearly struggling about like what it's like to be like a successful author, like way more successful than Ender's Game was, you know what I mean? Like to be a massive hit and to be a woman, and then her priest basically told her that she was a shit writer and that Twilight was trash, which is crazy because she was like the most successful Mormon writer of all time, which is saying a lot because there are a lot, and I mean just like numerically. So this really interesting thing with like Edward being Bella's Animus kind of helped inspire this kind of idea of like, what's my Animus? And over time, like my Animus was still kind of like a fictional character, because like when you're a woman, when you're an American woman, I can only speak to the American woman experience of like the experience that I've gone through. I can't speak for other people's experiences and other gender experiences or other culture experiences.
How politically correct of you. Good. I mean, I hear you.
I just know what's common from
Your perspective.
my area, and I know like women usually go in two directions in this country. They either don't have something bad happen to them and their animus is horses, or they have something bad happen to them and their animus becomes basically like a werewolf, or a vampire is a really common one. That's like where you get all the like young teen sexy romance, evil elf vampire smut. Like that's why it exists. That's why it does well, because women who have been through something kind of hard as a child will go towards this dark scary animus, and then women that don't have something bad happen to them will go towards like, but the main concept is like the opposite of the connotation and context in which you're existing in. So basically, like
it's like your doppelganger, dark doppelganger, kind of.
It's like true. It's like, so like you're a young girl, right? So like when you're a young child, disregarding what your gender is, you are like kind of like the opposite of an adult, which is like what you have authority over your life. You have say over what happens. You control your reality, you own a house perhaps, or you are in charge of leading a family, like you're a leader, you're in charge.
Certain responsibilities.
Right,
Yeah.
and when you're a child, you're like the opposite of those things coded, right? So your animus would take on those opposite aspects as a child. They tend to have more power. That's like why boy animuses, when they're young, tend to be like lady of the, or anima, excuse me, tends to be like lady of the lake and shit, because she's like mysterious. It's like older women, like what do they mean to you when you're a small child? They're like wise women, right? They cook or whatever, they tell you stories, or like, you know, whatever kind of like maternal instinct combined with the confusion and mystery of adulthood from the child mind, right? So I start to work with my animus. I start making comics about my animus, and I'm not going to get into it too much because it involves kind of like spoilers, but basically my I got my animus to the point where it was no longer fictional characters, and it was starting to be people that existed, and it started to be people that were closer and closer to like what I want to be, right? So like things that aren't external, that are like the opposite of me, right? Like power, because it was like powerful vampire dude, which is like completely unattainable, but like loosely contains like the seeds of what I want, which is autonomy, happiness, freedom, self-respect, whatever I may see as being like opposite to my current position, right? So then,
Porcelain skin.
yeah, and then made of diamonds. Yeah, perfect, beautiful, hot, gorgeous, whatever, all that stuff. And so that slowly, my animus slowly turned into actual people, where my
Like
goal.
Wizard of Oz style, like you were there and you were there, like,
Yeah,
or
like at one point, like the last human animus I had was David Lynch,
shout
because
out.
so rest in peace. So David Lynch, I discovered David Lynch when I was looking for something boring to watch to go to sleep to, and I had never heard of him before, and I found Twin Peaks, and I was still recovering from like working with a couple LA people, where basically the way the animation scene was at the time was like, oh my god, yes, pitch us a show, just make sure it's Rick and Morty. Like they weren't buying shows that weren't Rick and Morty. It was like, oh, but this script is great, we love it, it's perfect, rewrite it so that it's basically Rick and Morty, you know what I mean? And so I guess having these really intense restrictions on me kind of made me burn out and like not feel inspired, and like I wanted to make anything. So to watch David Lynch was kind of like, because of how like crazy and just like weird his stuff is. It's just like
And yet it's paradoxically very rooted. I mean, watching Twin Peaks and right now, like I said earlier, rewatching it, it's like it's got the beat. Like it came out 89, 90, 91, and it's got the beat for a lot of stuff that would pre X-Files. It feels like that vibe.
yes, they're all the same universe.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Stargate.
What?
Even General Briggs is in Stargate, dog. He's like one of the main
I've only seen the
characters.
shit movie Stargate. I
They
didn't.
changed their names, but you know, wink, wink. You know.
Okay.
And then all the same people worked on them. But anyway, David Lynch was the last animus I had. And I started to like, and you know, it's crazy. There were all these side effects. I did all these like really harmful things to myself, like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that were just sort of like aspects of like different traumas I had been through, that were like, as I was working through my different animus stages and incorporating whoever he is, I eventually like had this like mind blown moment where I was like, what if my animus is actually real and on the other side, and I'm actually my animus's anima? Like, what
Oh
if
no,
I could
no.
be
I mean, yes,
right?
Raphael's smiling, but it's like I think it's more weird than we could imagine. That's the whole Twin Peaks trip, or Wizard of Oz, or Inside Out, the movie, which is very Jungian and Buddhist, or whatever. These fractalizations. Manly P. Hall said like we're the atoms of the gods, and they're dreaming us, or whatever the fuck.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's a head
So,
trip. Raphael, you look like you want to say something. I'm tripping.
I'm listening.
so one of the creators of chaos magic, his name is Peter J. Carroll.
Okay.
And I don't agree with everything.
Any relation to the Alice in Wonderland guy?
You know what? I think that I never trust authors when they tell me their names. I'm assuming that was
Yeah,
just
Wolly
name.
Might.
Yeah, period. I mean, period. That's, you gotta do it. I'm assuming he picked that name because Alice in Wonderland was involved. It has to be so. I know he's also British, but he's still alive. He's like, I don't know how old he is. I mean, he like started the IoT in like the 70s or whatever. So like, just to give you an idea, like, you know,
What's the IoT?
That's the chaos magic occult order that started in Europe in response to the OTO because they disagreed with them on this and that philosophically. So,
Politics.
well, yeah, and also like philosophically they disagree, but they kind of turned into like the OTO in their own way. But anyway, that's besides the point. I mean, I know Peter Carroll eventually left the IoT because he's like, all right, you guys are getting a bit OTO with it, but he was like he's considered a very influential person in chaos magic, and so I had found myself being the admin of a chaos magic group after.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not gonna recount that story. We don't need to get into it. It's boring and
Oh, it's just like
it was
it's a
bad.
Facebook group, people.
Yeah,
Just so you know.
but it was intense though. And then I rejoined, and Facebook glitched and made me an admin.
Whoopsies.
Yeah, so
Hail Eris.
yeah, seriously, when you look at the mod stuff, it says everything that like who was admitted into the group by who became made, who got made a moderator by who, or admin by who. Mine was a glitch. So I was like, okay, I guess Chaos Magic, we've chosen each other. So I reached out to Peter Carroll to see if he wanted to voice act as Watts, the character, the
Mhm.
rabbit character, and he said yes.
Well, there you
So
go.
he recorded the voiceover lines for Watts the Rabbit like 2 months ago, and that's going to be the next episode, and I'm animating that right now. And after Peter fucking Carroll voiced Watts, I was like, I think I'm good with the Animus thing. And like
You've worked it through.
yeah, like I think we're good now. It's like needing to like looking for someone who's like more powerful than you, or someone who like has more authority than you to like give you kind of like some sort of validation to help you. I feel like I worked through whatever it was that made me feel helpless.
Mm-hmm.
Worked through whatever made me feel like I'm looking for an
Like a
upward to
hero. Like a
integrate.
hero.
Yeah.
When
Yeah, I was
like
like,
the strength card is like the Leo card, and whenever I'm giving a reading to someone, I'm like, Leo is the character. It doesn't have to be. It can be Jedi or Sith, but we all need something to look up to. Like we want to be like Mike. We have to formulate ourselves off of the archetype, for lack of a better term, of something that we respect and admire and want to be ourselves or whatever. So it sounds like maybe that's shifting for you a little.
yeah, it's like something huge in me dissolved, and like all these different like personality traits that I had, they weren't bad or good, but like they're dissolving too, or like turning into something else. You know what I mean?
Are you into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure by any
Of
chance?
course.
You know, stands. Like, what do you look at that as?
Wait, what? It's been a couple
Their
years.
stands are like these like little almost like higher self psychic forms
Yes.
where they battle and shit. And
Yes. I think I don't know what I look like, but I think that there has been some sort of form that's been achieved, and I feel like even though there's a lot of pain in the world too, because I also experienced like a legendary tier death this year, um I feel like more complete, and the things that bothered me like seem to like not bother me like they did. I mean, I'm still rambunctious, and I'm still annoying, and I still love to fight, but I don't know. Something in
you're
me is
maturing,
changed. Yeah,
dare I
I
say.
guess so. I guess I'm turning into an adult. Yeah, getting a frontal lobe in the past 5 years has been pretty dope for that as well.
It's a good upgrade. It's an interesting one. So, I mean, we could talk about any number of things. Raphael, is there anything on your mind at the moment, or are you just geeking?
No, I was just pulling up what Andreas spoke of.
Does it have to do with Thanos? Like the
Illuminates of Thanateros.
They combined two gods, Thanatos and Eros, and like that's their god, and basically like they're in order, and there's a British sector and an American sector, and they both are like the other one is I respect them, but we do stuff different here. But they're not like the OTO where you can just like show up, and they're actually kind of like, you can't say this, but they're kind of dying. At least in America they are.
well,
Um,
culture isn't. Yeah, culture shift,
well, I
obviously.
mean, when you make your thing, like you don't have like a recruitment tactic like the OTO does, then it's just like natural and part of it, and with just what happens and stuff. But yeah, they're like just like in order, like that. They come from a lineage of orders. I feel like the OTO, the IoT, they all kind of have like a butt sex Freemasonry order that they stem from.
Word noted. I don't know about all that. We did have a Master Mason on at one point, and I think Raphael and I were kind of the impression that I forget. Andreas has talked about it before, like the gentleman Mason or something, where it's like a Mason by a handshake or outside of it, like not a real one. But bottom line is, after hearing a Master Mason reading some Manly P. Hall and stuff like that, it's like they're just like Gnostic. Depending, I mean, usually it seems
some of them are just cool, nice dudes that have hot dogs with each other.
right. It's like a boys club.
The issue is always you can't hardly generalize with any very large organization and give one judgment over all of them.
How Libra of you? I hear you.
I got invited to a Masonic temple by a guy, and I was like, oh shit, the guy that invited me here for dinner is like the one esoteric guy, because they were like all very like grounded, like they owned like
they were businessmen,
repair places and shit, like, you know.
Right. It seems like obviously one shoe doesn't fit everybody, but like there's almost like, from what we were talking with Ian on his episode number 93, Thelema number, ironically, he was saying that like the esoteric stuff, most people aren't into it like that. It's mostly just like a Boy Scouts club for men who are businessmen. When
I'm talking about old shit. I'm talking old stuff.
Old. So what is chaos magic to you? I mean, I'm aware of it because of Grant Morrison and his Invisibles kind of comic books. I didn't even finish that shit because I was eating a lot of acid and it got kind of dark and I was like, this is fucking my head up. But basically, when we were talking earlier about taking on the mantle of kind of all arrows of the directional, it's like, I am God. There is no God. You are God. We are, how do you apply that in your day-to-day life?
I try my best to not let myself stagnate and commit to, well, I don't know how to word it. I guess I would try to keep an open mind.
It's like the leading edge of novelty.
I would say my philosophy on magic is not the same thing as your morals on magic, is not the same as your intention with magic. These are three totally different things. The philosophy of chaos magic doesn't intentionally have a specific set of dogmatic beliefs,
right,
religious beliefs, or even it's just a philosophical belief that these different paradigms are existing as different tools for you to use, and you may choose to pick up any tool that you want at any point in time and modify it and study it and use it to your heart's content, and that's really all it is.
Okay, so along those lines, like Raphael smoking, it feels like sometimes, like with the postmodern view, it's like everyth's relative, it's all good, it can be anything, kind of what we were saying earlier. It's like all these gods maybe be the same thing from a different angle, but like smoking cannabis is not going to have the same effect as like drinking a glass of wine, which is not going to have the same effect as like caffeine, even though we could relativize it to the point where it's like, well, it's just chemistry happening to a monkey brain or whatever. I don't know where I was going with that point. Mercury retrograde.
Specific, the paradigm, a little bit more difficult to flip it. Like clearly, if I don't have an arm, like I can't have an arm now. You know,
a one-armed girl.
Yeah.
I think he's underrated. People, like I was talking to my girlfriend. I was like, "What's your favorite character?" It's like Dale Cooper, obviously, all these people. And I was like, the one-armed guy is like a shaman. Like,
yes,
he's what's up. He gets it. Anyway,
So,
I didn't mean to digress there.
What I'd like to say on chaos magic or on this approach, I would say, even though I don't, I wouldn't even necessarily subscribe to that either, but that would even be a chaos magic stance, I guess. But potentially the big advantage that there is, even though I can understand people find value in different so-called sacred texts, what I by now would say are just medieval history books, but anyways, or different lores or different gods and archetypes they then want to be a devotee of or whatever else. But the basic idea of chaos magic in terms of sampling different things and trying to understand different things, especially in this world where we never can be exactly sure, who is really telling the truth or doing the best they can and who isn't, is just giving you a much larger tool set and more capacity to develop mentally and spiritually. Because other than that, if I'm like a staunch whatever variant of Christianity or whatever else, I'm most likely locked into a particular framework. And even here, I cannot be sure, is this framework really coming directly from God? Or who were all the 100 priests it was handed down from, right? Until I arrived at it. And is it not just another part of some variant of a control tactic? And I believe this applies to so many different types of spiritual systems that here I find it advantageous to at the very least study different ones and be like, okay, how far can I go with this? How far can I go with this? What is enabled here? What is enabled there? To have just a broader consciousness, let's say. And then you can still choose to stick to something. But if I'm like locked into one thing due to my culture or whatever else it is, then I'm almost always locked out of even just neutrally exploring. Let's take the example with these demons or whatever. I would say, okay, maybe I don't want to have them, I don't know, hang around. At the same time, don't they say, you know, keep your friends close and your enemies closer? But just in terms of being able to neutrally process information, I think this approach is very beneficial, because from a staunch particular type of Christian view, I guess, you wouldn't be allowed to touch a tarot deck. But why not learn about archetypes and understand how they relate to your own life and all of that, right?
And if you choose to be a devotee, which I consider myself a devotee to basically an entire house party of entities at this point, if they really do have your best interest at heart and you really do decide to commit outside of the philosophy of chaos magic to be a devotee of this or that, if your intention is to try to open your mind and try to become a better like wizard or some shit, if that's truly your intention, you will not offend whoever you are a devotee to, because if they have your best interest at heart, because they, you know, they want to see you be the best you, hopefully, if you got good people in your corner. So like, you know, if I take a break from, you know, believing that, you know, Hecate wants me to, you know, kiss a special key 2 times a day or whatever, like, she's not gonna hate me for that. So
she won't begrudge you. It's funny because at the beginning of Manly P. Hall's, and I'm not a huge Manly P. Hall person. I had a period where I was kind of geeking on it, but not recently by any means. At the beginning of Secret Teachings of the Ages, he's kind of going through the history of philosophy in terms of schools of thought. And it's like these guys were circle believers, and they thought the world was a circle. And these guys thought it was all water, and these guys thought it was all fire. And it's funny because some of these people you would know and hear, like, you know, Aristotle or whoever, like some of these great thinkers. And it seems like it's just a bunch of musical chairs. We're all running around the thing, not able to talk about it. You named your Rabbit Watts. I'm assuming that's based off of Alan Watts. And he's always like, the thing cannot be named. I mean, that's the Tao, right? The Tao that is the Tao can't be named. So it seems like what you were saying with the flower analogy earlier, Molly, was apropos to the degree that I've always kind of looked at, because I'm a guitarist and musician, right? And I'm like, we're all drinking from the same cistern, but like we're all cupping different water at different rates or different, you know, angles of approach or whatever. And it should be said, because it's funny, like we're so used to our postmodern culture where like anything goes, like piercings, tattoos, kind of the archaic revival in a McKenna sense is pretty a-okay. We're kind of reacting, I guess you could say, to staunch WASP culture of whatever, you know, the Protestant culture or Catholic Christian culture, religious dogmatism or whatever. But I think even to some degree that there was a time like Dionysus, everyone's always like, oh, that's so cool. It's like they basically ran around like tornado, like not raping and pillaging, but like you didn't want to get caught up in a Dionysian like whirlpool necessarily, because you could lose teeth, arms, legs, your life, whatever. It was pretty chaotic, literally chaos god, right? So I don't know where I was going with that. This Mercury retrograde is really fucking with me. I keep having brain farts, but it seems like right now we're coming from a very comfortable cultural place of everyone do what you're comfortable with, almost like really like politically correct is maybe not the right word, but it's just like very customizable, very relative to you, your experience, your reality tunnel, do what thou wilt kind of thing. And there might be, and I hate, you know, I get in conversations with witches where I'm like, with Christians, I'm like, tarot and astrology and all this stuff is so much more important than you guys think. Like, how do you think they found baby Jesus? And whatever, little things like that, right? But then with like pagans, I'm like, these might be more important than just like stickers on your car or posters in your locker. It might have more gravitas to them. Like, it would be crazy to find one day that these weren't just mental projections, us playing with psyche stuff like we discussed earlier. If there were actually,
well, even if they are, they have a real effect. Even if they are.
Right. That's
just
kind
like
of
Molly said about whatever brain patterns, neuroplasticity, all of that. So it's still real. Or
Right, but that would be like in that instance, like when it's like the neurological pathways have been scar tissued. That's a very materially. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's like coming from a strictly material thing where it's like the changes in the materiality are having such a consequence that the processing is altered to such a degree that you're experiencing demons. Where
But it's
I
it's
wonder
the
if they
other way
exist
around
outside of the
first,
mind altogether.
right?
that-
Yeah.
you know, the
Mhm.
brain, the brain matter or whatever. Anyway, I've talked a lot. Molly, talk to us about what you're up to now. You're doing zines.
I'm making zines. I'm making stickers. I make stickers at home. That's really fun. I got a Patreon. I got a sticker tier and a zine tier. The zine has comics in it. Lately, I've been writing about occult stuff and giving assignments.
Like
And
what? When you say occult stuff, like what in general, or
so, actually, funny enough, the last zine I did a whole section about egregores.
word?
So
If
I
people don't know what an egregore is, please
Right.
explain.
And I gave basic instructions on if you want to meet a local egregore that's connected to a place. I gave them instructions on how to potentially be able to do that. So I just sent those out. Didn't get any feedback yet because people are just now getting them. And I'm working on episode 2 of Deep States. Peter J. Carroll, he's voicing Watts. Hell yeah. Um,
You're excited. Strength card indeed. So, like I was saying a second ago, if people don't know what an egregore is, because not everybody's hyper hard on the magical thinking necessarily, an egregore, like aggregation, like a stalactite aggregates over time to create itself with water. The idea would be something to the effect there's psychic. The more energy people put onto something like Santa Claus or something, it becomes a thing. It's almost like a psychic golem. Or is that maybe how you think of it, or how do you think of it?
Oh my God, Santa Claus is a really funny example for you to just pull out because of the whole Saturnalia, Santa. What's the name of the German Santa Claus?
The
Krampus.
Krampus, yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
no, Krampus is the wait. You have
like
Saint
Norwegian.
Nicholas, Saint
Yes, and
Nicholas,
St. Nicholas as well.
and
Yes.
Krampus is the devil archetype. Let's say
He's
where
the
they
Bob
even
part
have
of it.
Right, right, and
yeah.
then like that's making love with the Saturnalian, Saturnian archetypes, and then Coca-Cola was like, "It's mine now."
Polar bears. Santa trucks are coming, dude. Advertise. Okay, so you're into advertising. I mean, obviously, I think the idea of the hashtag becoming a podcast, Team Rabbit Hole. I get like marketing to a degree. What do you think of? How do you look at marketing and advertising in terms of magic?
Oh
Like
yeah.
how obviously it's like
Just
programming the psyches.
before you continue to
Hmm.
show that in Austria they actually dress up like this once a year
Yeah,
and run around and so on, right?
I
So
wouldn't want to trip there. Probably that'd be pretty heavy.
Oh my God, fantastic. He's so hot. Now that's an Animus, baby.
yeah,
That's in Vienna. Do you go to that, Raphael?
no.
Not
I
yet.
once attended somewhere in the countryside as a child, and that because they literally they run after you, like they don't hurt you in a way that's lasting, but they will
They bring
hit you with stuff
chaos.
and so
It's like
on. So
Halloween.
Yeah, it's like Halloween, Christmas. I mean, I think the idea is like, you get coal in your stocking. This is like the hardcore manifestation of that energy. It's like this is the demons that spank you, I guess, when you're a bad kid. Is that the idea?
pretty much, yeah, you have the positive one, which is Saint Nicholas, and the negative one, which is the Krampus, and they basically tell you, yeah, if you're nice, you're gonna get some apples and some, usually today it's sweets, of course, from the nice Nicolaus who looks like
You'll get a
Santa Claus,
Coca-Cola.
basically. But it's around I think I should know this, 6th of November or December or something like this, so it's before Christmas. I don't even know anymore. And the Krampus, anyways, is the evil guy, and they're like, yeah, if you're not nice, Krampus is gonna get you,
He
basically,
chains you.
which is the devil.
They say
Yeah.
he chains you and he like basically drags you to hell, which is so dope.
You're such a Sag. You're always see you play with the fire walk with me indeed for you Sag. What you were saying you were messed with the Goa show. We don't have to like blow you up on that, but it's like you've obviously been more comfortable playing in the darker spots of magic and psyche stuff. Like not everyone messes with voodoo. What do you think that you can attribute that to? And I mean, it's cool to yin and yang, yeah, it's like black and white lodge, but I don't think I would want to make out with Bob ever. So it's like how do you process that? And when I'm saying Bob, I'm talking about Twin Peaks, so people are like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Oh, Bob, you know what? And actually, Bob, you bring up a really good point with Bob. I don't think Bob is necessarily hurting, like going out of his way to hurt people. I think Bob is just a part of nature. And I think that unfortunately, I've been put in a position where I had more Bob in my life than you've had, and for whatever reason. And so dealing with Bob wasn't really a choice for me. It was something I had to do to survive. So my experience with you, I mean, also when you say demons, like, I mean, we're talking about what people, white people mean when they say demons. Like, we're not talking like Chinese demons where they're just basically spirits, like, right? Like, we're talking
No, I'm
about,
talking like Goetia or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah. I think like in my personal experience, I think like Malfus is like the perfect example for me because like when I was really going through what was basically the pinnacle of the worst period of my life, and that was back when all those people were cursing me and stuff for really just unfair reasons. Like that whole situation was just really fucked up. There were crows have like they have a thing where they all go when in the winter because it's so cold. They go to the same place in the early morning and early night to basically snug up. Where in the warmer months they break off into families. So this was in the winter, and they were all flying over my apartment. This was back when I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you could just hear extremely because I lived on the top of an attic of like an old a mansion that got broken up into a bunch of apartments on top of a hill. And so
Some
there
witchy
was
shit.
yes. Yeah, no, I literally they call like my bathroom was known as the neighborhood witch tower because it had a witch hat on top of it. It was like an old water tower of like a farm that got converted. And the crows were so loud that like 5 in the morning you'd be laying in bed and it would just be like ah like so loud. So I started going outside and giving them peanuts at a crow collar, which is like illegal now. Probably partially my fault. I made a disco ball jacket because I heard they liked shiny stuff. I made fake crows. I put it on the fire escape. I used to smoke cigarettes back then, so you know I would get out there and chain smoke, and I would throw peanuts at them basically.
Odin approved. It's like feeding Hugo Immunin or whatever.
Yeah. And I was trying with Malfus because Malfus was known as he's a crow Goetia,
Okay.
and he's known as like basically being he's written, and by the way I think the way the Goetia are written about is super fucked up and wrong, and also is changed a couple times in history. We've lost a lot of those original grimoires about it, and Curly is kind of like written some stuff in there that is his own perspective, but basically um he's known as like someone who knows all the secrets about what your enemies are plotting against you. So that was like he chose me. I didn't pick him, which was really interesting because that's back when I was dealing with a lot of this kind of situation, and I was just so sick of like it be feeling like shit all the time and just like being insecure and like feeling unsafe basically. I was sick and tired of feeling unsafe, and like I was laying in bed and this like huge beam of light was just like coming into my attic bedroom, which is like all triangular and pyramid-y shaped. Um, and the crows were calling, and I was just like crying because it was like one of the worst periods of my life, and I was just like, I just want to like what I want to know what it's like to like feel like peaceful. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, in that moment, I finally let my guard down after just like like probably like 24 years of just like fighting as hard as I fucking can. I was like, can you help me like learn how to feel peaceful? And like that's when I met Malfus and was like, surprise, I'm actually the president of peace, yo. Because it's like knowing what your enemies are plotting against you, that information should not be used for freaking out. That information should not be used for stressing. That information
To
should not be.
pacify your
Yeah,
nerves. Yeah.
you use the information of what your enemies are plotting against you to try to create peace and safety. And like that was the and even though that seems like really kind of like dumb, I like when you listen to someone else's epiphany that they have, like it
It
doesn't
doesn't always
sound
translate. I hear you.
but like in that moment, like that, I feel like I learned peace in that moment, and so, like that was my experience working with Malthus, and like that was the moment I fully unlocked Malthus as like a bestie because he's not a demon of what your enemies are bickering about you when you're not looking, right? He's the information and the intelligence that you receive through doing whatever you need to do to collect intelligence to ensure peace and safety. And so I think all the demons are kind of like that. And Bale being kind of like the highest level of action. Like, I'm not even gonna go into Bale Girl because that shit is wild. But basically, like, taking action or not taking action was the lesson I learned from Bale. And so, in a way, all of these Goetia demons, for me, I consider them keys of peace. And I think they're extremely wise. I think all the kings and presidents are very wise. And it's about, what do you have this information, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to freak out, or are you going to, like, do what is needed to be a good leader, to be a good friend, to be a good daughter, whatever.
To be strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, Raphael, because I know I've been listening to a lot of Bashar lately, and that's ironically yesterday one was about Santa Claus and how he lives in your heart or something. But I'm curious how you guys think beliefs and definitions create the conditions for these things. And it's not to denounce something as real or not. I'm not really tripping on that front, but it's like, because you believe, Molly, that you're going through stuff where your victimization is, I mean, it sounds like you were going through a victimizing time. I don't know the details, but like you're going through something where you don't prefer it. Let's put it that way. Even though it might be teaching you something grander that you can't see now, kind of like in the Bible, Joseph probably didn't want to get thrown in the fucking well and sold into slavery, but ultimately he gets put in a position of power to free his family, and Christ is through that lineage, according to the story, so don't speak. So like bad things can create good results, even though they don't feel comfy all the time. It's not always about like eating Twinkies and pushing the easy button kind of thing. I'm wondering how you guys look at magic, chaos magic, whatever, egregores in any capacity, in terms of belief formation and how those things can walk you through your metamorphosis. Like obviously beliefs change. It sounds like you were saying earlier, Molly, with David Lynch and stuff, your Animus, like how that's a belief. You're like, oh, these things, I believe I'm experiencing this, so I'm defining it thusly. And then maybe your reality tunnel shifts a little, so the beliefs and definitions shift. I'm rambling. So if you guys know what I'm saying, feel free to take the conch and run with it. But I'm just wondering, because whether it's dogmatic or, laissez-faire
You got your
belief.
personal box, and then you have your professional box, right? So I'm a professional animator. I'm gonna draw certain things certain ways because I know clients want me to do that, and also I'm gonna learn from other people in the field to improve my drawing style and to draw a certain way. Is that how I like to draw when no one's looking? Is that how
I
I
want
like?
to see your sketchbooks. Now that
I
you say
mean,
that.
like, well, my point is, like, my sketchbooks are very different than what you see online. What you see online is a combination of what I really like to do and what I think people will like. And then what I do for clients, if you look at that work, which I don't post it, it's like, oh, that's like oh, she can actually draw, because, like, that's, like, what people really want to see. So I think what's interesting is, like, with these different dogmas and beliefs or whatever, I have, like, I have a little box that psychologically that I like to indulge in, where I like to put my favorite beliefs and ideas, and I like them and I collect them sometimes, like things that I really like. And but that's not necessarily what I don't always pull the things out of the box when I'm experimenting or exploring, or God forbid, like, ever get into an argument with someone. I would never want, because I find that I am usually on the other side of those conversations where I believe breaking down beliefs is really important. But of course, I keep a couple private beliefs in a special little box that I
Well, it's
really
like
like.
unavoidable. It seems belief
I mean, they're
is
fun.
necessary. It's like the
If they don't
programming through
harm
which we
you,
operate. Yeah.
right? And if they don't harm you and others, they're really nice, and they can even look cute. And it's like, do I think that a local tree is secretly one of my best friends? Yes, and no one can take that from me. You know what I mean? Like, I like that.
This very Cancer moon of you. You've got some like nostalgic, emotional attachments to magic,
Oh yes.
magical, like nurturing magical
affects
things.
it affects everything for me, because, like, everything is like an inside joke and also like a heartwarming experience, even when it's something really dumb, like just like wanting to manifest a pen because I want to see if I can, and then, like, I get a pen through, like, someone I haven't seen in a long time who says something, like, really meaningful and nice to me that I needed to hear, and it's like, oh, you, but, like, you is me, or like whatever.
Following your excitement, right, Raphael? And
So
without knowing your expectation being exactly
mm,
met. Go ahead.
what comes to mind is the question whether a belief or an assumption is actually opening doors to you, because maybe for somebody else who would just regard or basically disregard the tree, they wouldn't be able to have a conversation with it wherever this conversation is exactly coming from, especially if we go into the idea of all in some way, shape, or form being one thing, then that would be just a portal for you to communicate with in whatever way, emotionally or whatever, or whether there's assumptions or beliefs, of which there are many, especially in the world stage, let's say, which actually limit you from seeing certain things or limit your capacity. For me, basically, it always comes back to capacity to be sovereign or not in your own decisions, because many things we are told and many assumptions we are given may not exactly be correct. So from that point of view, it makes sense to question all of them. And then when you do, just as I'm pretty sure you are doing it in this example, construct them somewhat consciously or whatever, or be aware basically of the assumptions and beliefs you have and use them in a positive way, rather than being given beliefs and assumptions that most oftentimes, if they come from up above in terms of power structure, usually are there to keep you in a box and not question things and not gain more sovereignty.
If you feel personally offended by someone suggesting a belief that you've chosen to pick up is wrong in some way or has historical context that may change what it means, you might need to do some looking around.
Exactly right.
Right, it makes me think of like, I mean, Harry Potter a little, where at some level Harry isn't trying to piss off Dumbledore or Snape, but then at some point he's going to do his thing with Dumbledore in the secret cave, whether it's code, like a school code or not. So individuation involves. It's funny because I don't know if you're into war. I doubt you're into Warhammer 40k, Molly, and you might have heard of it in a very
I was a World of Warcraft kid.
Oh my god!
I down and played some recently. I got Turtle WoW. I was like, I don't need to pay. Fuck yes.
I've never done WoW. I don't play Warhammer. I just read the lore, and it's some of the most philosophically like heavy stuff I've ever read. And I'm into cool shit. So just so you know, it's not just like a bunch of guys with guns all the time.
Everyone
it's like
keeps telling me to
shit.
read into it because I know it's very chaos magic, spare inspired, like or Osmond Spare or whatever. And that's
one guy though, his name is Fabius Bile. You don't have to get into this. Basically, he's this dude who's a chaos guy, and it's about individuation. It's like the child has to rebel against the parent at some point, or else they're just in tow. That's kind of essentially what the prodigal son story is about in the Bible. It's like, look, you have two polarities: one who's dogmatically rigid, and one who's like liberal, laissez-faire, and they both have different kind of karma based off of those polarity positions. Being rigid has its, you're an asshole and you have no heart. Being liberal is like, you've got STDs now and you're broke, you partied too hard or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like no pole has all the answers, and it seems every pole has to go through each pole. That's the fool's journey. It's not just like you don't just sit there forever. I'm rambling, but
I'm not gonna fight Yaldabaoth. I'm gonna kiss him on the forehead. And no one can stop me. I mean,
so
I guess
this is you. You're gonna kiss him.
Wait. Is that just my version of fighting though? Am I just like changing the circumstances and doing the same thing? It is overcoming, basically. Like,
kill him with kindness.
Saying "fuck you, Dad," I'm like, "I love you, bro." Like, but is that like different? Truly, I don't know.
Well, if you mean it. I mean, if you're like sitting there in your mind saying, okay, boomer, to your dad, and then saying, I love you, batting your eyes like a good daughter, maybe that's not quite the same thing. But I do think you can disarm people with energy. I mean, this gets down to energy manipulation, beliefs, all this kind of stuff. I don't know what magic is ultimately. I mean, I'm not one who's trying to make pens appear and shit like that. But ultimately, it seems like magic in a sovereignty sense is knowing thyself to the degree that you know the eddies and currents that you can be aware of, and trying to navigate those with honesty and integrity.
Some people treat it like a science, but I mean, I think it's like an art. I mean, I don't think that I can necessarily recreate like 1 + 1 = 2, but I do know that it's like kind of like skateboarding,
Skate or die, Thrasher. I love skateboarding, dude. That like I really actually hurt my neck. I don't skateboard now, but I ate some shit a couple years ago during COVID lockdown because I was like, oh, I guess I'll skateboard. I'm near the park. It really hurt. We could start kind of winding down if you guys want. Was there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to address, Molly?
No, I'm so thankful that you let me on, and thanks for playing Deep States to your awesome music. It turned out really good. I love your music.
We got to collaborate. I mean, I'm always hitting you up, and I've been
in and out of meta because of everything that's been going on. Sometimes I'm extremely active. Sometimes I'm not at all. It's like But now it's like I'm getting more active again. So
Well, I've got your LinkedIn, or we all do now, so I guess I can hit you up. People, check her out. She's got cool magical things. She's obviously a hip chica. She's doing the thing, and she's doing it in her own way. That's one thing I always thought you had a lot of steez. Like, it's one thing to be magical, but it's another thing to, like, just, I don't know. You exude style to me, so I always thought you were fun and cool. I mean, this stuff, the Choose Your Membership, how's that working out?
oh yeah, it's going good. Those are connected to the episodes. Those are helping me produce the episodes. There's cool stickers and zines involved, and sometimes I put secret treats in them that I don't post about as well. Yeah, it's super
I saw
fun.
you posting your stickers up in New York City. I thought you had moved there for some reason. I was like, what the
Oh
fuck?
yeah, my sister's lived there forever, so I get to visit her and sleep on her couch.
The Big Apple. Well, you're cool. You're obviously Team Rabbit Hole. We've got some kind of kindred connection. I'm not going to go into like trying to label it, but rabbits definitely speak to both of us. And this is a good example. I mean, I've known about her peripherally for a few years, and you were one of the first guests on the podcast, episode 23, and now you're 304. So I appreciate you coming back on and geeking out. This is about finding the others, right? And flying your freak flag and doing your thing, and you'll attract the tribe that you need at any time. So I'm always there emotionally to support you, Molly. You're doing great. I might not always get what bobs you're playing with. Like, I'm like, I don't want to do voodoo, but I appreciate you're playing with those toys in the sandbox because someone has got to.
That's funny.
It's weird, I know. Raphael, any thoughts? Or Molly, last
Well,
thoughts?
thank you very much, Molly. I think your art is really great. I'll take a proper look now. I was almost thinking, do you want to give a very brief rundown of this first Deep State episode? Maybe I was in the wrong state of mind because I was starting to watch it, and you're right, it kind of starts slow. And I was like, I know this is good and this is cool, and I like the animation style, but like, what's going on, or something
She
along
did.
those
She did really
lines.
cackle. Just someone saying in the comments, "You go real life cackle." Your laugh was a witchy cackle for sure. Deep States, though. What's it about? Like,
Albert Hoffman and Sidney Gottlieb have unleashed something, and that's the plot of Deep States. That's all I feel comfortable saying.
well, if people don't know, Albert
All right.
Hoffman is the father of LSD. So
And Sidney Gottlieb, the father of MK Ultra.
I didn't know about. I see now. I got to watch Deep States. I don't know shit about shit.
Sidney Gottlieb, he definitely we can just call him a very evil mad scientist in real life.
So then, because there were some other ideas I had to bring up, or I thought about bringing up, if you're familiar with this series called Overlord, it's
Never
an
heard.
animation series. Oh, now I skipped over it again.
Oh wait,
One
that sounds
second.
familiar actually.
It sounds like Sidney
Um,
Gottlieb is Wyndham Earl, from what you're saying.
I only thought of it because you mentioned the Aldebaoth, and he like plays a role here. It's pretty tacky, like the whole
Oh
thing, because it's
yeah.
like one of these things where you're in an alternate universe. But I was surprised; it was surprisingly interesting because it's like about world building, let's say, and yeah. I mean, not on par with Attack on Titan or anything, but still
I want to
interesting.
show my
And the,
girlfriend that I
and
mentioned you.
and the other thing I wanted to say, of course, you know about the Hexentero, right? Just because you speak about MK Ultra. Are you familiar with the Hexentero?
No.
I'd never heard of it
Okay,
either,
well,
and it's some
you
serious
definitely
weirdness.
want to check it out
Oh,
because
this looks
it's
awesome.
basically it's like an MK Ultra roundabout.
cool.
Basically, it's insane, and they have all these people which were involved with. You see, Macy conferences, systems theory,
It looks like
control
Be Here
systems,
Now art a little.
philosophies.
I
All
need
these
this.
people that were involved. Yeah, I see One World Government. Yeah, this is pretty, I think, as deep state as it gets. You see here cybernetics, one of my favorite topics. So yeah, okay, I'm surprised you didn't know it. So it's something I
Oh,
can show
we're
you.
always learning out here.
Well,
Guys, find the others. That's the whole point. Thank you for the breadcrumbs, Raphael.
thank
Molly-
you very much, Molly. You have the last word.
I love you guys. Thank you so much for having me on. This was dope. You guys are funny and cool, and thank you so much for holding a space for me to just nerd out as hard as I want to.
Always, always.
Oh, great. That's what it's
Hopefully
all
another
about.
5 years won't pass. We'll get you on sooner than that. And maybe with people you're geeking out with professionally. Get a whole crew of
Yeah.
y'all.
I'll bring Michael on next time.
That's what's up. Shout out. All right, guys. Enjoy it. Further up, further in.
Peace.
Thanks, Carl.
Bye.